Hi, good afternoon. I'm trying this Windows 10 webcam and it's a little bit different than Windows 7, so hopefully this will work out okay. My name is Michael Ritzik and I am teaching this English 164 WA section, and I mainly wanted to give you an overview of the class and give you a bit of information. First of all, I wanted to mention that with the discussion boards that we do a number of them, and it appears that 21 out of 26 students were able to successfully get in and at least do one posting for the introductory discussion board. And then also to make sure to comment on two other students there as well. So it helps you to get to know people in the class more. And something that I will tell you is I believe every student should take at least one online course. And there is a reason for it that I will explain. More and more jobs are not done in a central location. More of them are done, out in the field and so on. So I had a student in this class more than 10 years ago. Her first name is Carolyn, and my desktop computer at home was not functioning right. And she is a Dell corporate rep, so she works on servers and bigger computer systems and so on. But it so happened that she was in my town. There's a bigger pharmacy in town, and so she was fixing something for them. And she came to my house, and so there was a motherboard issue. She fixed that, and she said out of 20 days, she's in the Johnstown office for Dale. She said maybe one day out of 20 she's there. Otherwise, she's in southwestern Pennsylvania, she's in Ohio, she's in West Virginia, and she's out in the field, fixing computers and so on. And two other situations that I will mention is I had a student in this class who is now a wound care specialist. So she's an RN, and she goes to nursing homes and lots of places. But uh, sometimes people are in an automobile or motorcycle accident, or they're a diabetic patient and so on, and so they have to really, really closely monitor any wounds or infections, or if they had surgery and so on. So just to go to their homes and then apply bandages and clean them and so on. And then if they're not healing, then they have to make a determination. Should they go to the hospital? Should they be admitted or whatnot? So she uses like Skype. She takes pictures, does videos, and so on. And she works in a practice with other RNs and doctors and so on, physician's assistants. And so, but that's their specialty, wound care. And so sometimes the doctor will have to look at it and then give a prognosis, or, prescribe perhaps an antibiotic or some sort of specific cream. So that's a good example. And then a third example that I will share with you is I have a student, I had a student in this class, and so she works in West Virginia for, I don't know if it's WVU or one of those big medical centers, but she works with a group of people and they go out in one of these big RVs. And so she's like maybe a sonographer, but she's also trained as a phlebotomist and lab specialist. And so they do prenatal care for mothers in these very outlying communities. So of course they do sonograms, but they have to do like urine tests and blood tests and lots of others. And so but her work is not in a central office; it's out, in all sorts of different locations. So I just wanted to kind of mention that. I also wanted to tell you during this class, you were going to be doing a research paper like on health or wellness or fitness or even like alternative medicine. So I've had people that did acupuncture, chiropractic medicine. I was just looking at the newspaper today. I had a student a couple years back who was a midwife. So she delivered babies in her own home, and then she also delivered babies, at pregnant women's homes. And so it was interesting, but the thing that I found kind of unique is, when you go to a hospital, you're kind of lying, the woman is lying like sort of, upward. And so midwives don't believe that's the best position to be in. They, some of them deliver children in water. And so the baby comes out that way. So it's a different, philosophy altogether. I've had people that did on like chronic illnesses like Crohn's disease, or some people have chronic pain. How do you deal with that? Migraine headaches. Eastern medicine compared to traditional Western medicine. I mean, it's a pretty broad area, but I found some really fascinating papers. And what you will find in doing your research is sometimes you go to one source, and that person will lead you to other pieces of information. So more than 10 years ago, there's actually the woman who works here at the college. Her name is Melissa, and she did a really good research paper on the benefits to the mother and to the child for breastfeeding. So I taught a brief time at California University of Pennsylvania, and Dr. Ed Shute worked there, and his wife is Gwen Shute, and she is a RN, but she's a lactation consultant. So, work with women to help them to, successfully breastfeed and so on. And anyhow, so Melissa, found some really good sources, but she went to see Gwen, and so Gwen gave her some good information, but she gave her like a couple of books. And then there's an organization called La Leche League, and so it's like people who advocate for breastfeeding and so on. And she led her to all sorts of good information. And so sometimes you will see that. And then the other part that's beneficial about this course, this is why we use the discussion boards for different parts of the paper, like the first draft and so on, and the second draft, is that other people comment on the papers. And I had somebody in this class last year, and so they were doing some sort of nutrition based paper. I cannot remember what it was. Maybe it was something like eating, the Italian based diet where you have uh, like more like olive oil and salads and things like that. And so one of the students in class, her sister was a nutritionist, and so that proved to be very helpful. So you'll get ideas from other students, and that's what I like about this course. Now, I wanted to tell you a few things that you will find very helpful. I have the yesterday's Tribune Review, and yeah, it was actually Tuesday, May 23rd. So every Tuesday, this one, they always have 2 pages of medical information. This is on I guess a bacterial infection, sepsis. And so this doctor, who's a professor at Pitt Medical School, he commented on it. But there was a really good article, Midwives Increasingly Popular. And so they look at how many more midwives there are, and there's also nursing midwives who work at hospitals. So anyhow, they talk about some of the advantages of that. And then there was another article like Hunger, Thirst, Loneliness, and Seniors Can Be Eased. And so they had a really good article on that. You will find also, too, at local hospitals or local health facilities, they will have support groups, or they will have groups on specific topics, such as like depression, or people who lost someone due to cancer, or of course these days, you have people who lose their lives due to prescription drug overdoses, opiate overdoses, and so on. So um, anyhow, they have check out the Tribune Review every Tuesday, because they have really good information. I also wanted to let you know that we always have a reference librarian on duty for both halves of the summer. So if you ever wanted to call the 724-925 4100 number, and then you could speak to one of the librarians. And also, if you go to the library website at the WCCC portal there, it will give you our databases, but it'll also, you can ask a librarian a question. The two really good databases are like the one is the EBSCOhost, and it's in there, and the other one is LexisNexis, which has a lot of really good health-related sources. Sometimes they call EBSCOhost Master File Premier, but as you will see, they have specific medical databases that are very good, and I like that one a great deal. So there is also a website that I would ask you to bookmark, and it is called askherepa.org. So askherepa.org, and they have reference librarians available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Some years ago, a student that I had in technical communication asked me if I would be able to help him finding some sources on philosophy, and that is not my area of expertise. So he ended up connecting with one of these librarians, and so he lived in Latrobe, and then there was a couple of sources that he was able to access through Adams Memorial Library in Latrobe. He found a ton of information at St. Vincent College, and she also referred him to some web sources, so that's a good place to look. The other one, there's two that I would also mention. The one is called refdesk.com. That's a pretty good general purpose reference information. Our former librarian also used to like Bartleby, B-A-R-T-E-L or B-A-R-T-L-B-Y. I can't remember which. You can look it up, bartleby.com. That's a really good reference one. And then the last one that I would mention is owl.english.purdue.edu, so the online writing lab for Purdue University. So they have information on citing sources, the MLA and the APA, and so on. We're going to use the MLA in this class. So I just wanted to tell you that. And a couple other things that I wanted to mention besides the research paper. The research paper is 12 to 15 pages with the 12 to 15 sources. And of course, it can be longer than that. Whatever you do, though, don't use Wikipedia. That's not a good one. You can, if you ever want to find out general information, you can look at it, but don't use it in a paper. And the idea of a pretty good research paper is to vary your sources. Even like when I teach technical communication, I have students write a consumer report where they look at 3 brands of a product and they choose one. So one thing that kind of mystifies me is how someone would buy a vehicle using all web sources, or even buy a bicycle. It's one of those, bicycle you have to sit on and see if it fits your, your hands, if the arms are okay, the seating posture and all that. I mean, it doesn't make any sense just to look at something like that on the web. The same thing like buying a vehicle. So anyhow, it's a good idea to have some web sources, some periodicals, which would be journals, magazines, newspapers, things like that, and of course interviews. So you have a little bit of a variety of sources. So I would tell you that. And in this book, Writing Research Papers, there is a whole chapter on evaluating sources, which is actually pretty important. So they have the second tab, Gathering Sources, but they also have a tab on critical reading. And so I've been here at this college, and so when I first started here, the problem wasn't, the problem was finding sources, because it was a really laborious job. We had the card catalog, you had to use paper indexes, and now there is like a whole flood of information, and so you have to find quality, sources. When you write a research paper, this is something that I would tell you without a doubt. Do not stay with one source for like 3 or 4 pages. That is not a good idea. You would want to try to mix it up a little bit. If you stay with one source and it's not a good source, and you do that for a couple pages, it really sinks your paper. I had someone in this class, and I remember this specifically because I asked our reference librarian. Um, she got this information from some really shaky source, and the person who wrote it was supposedly some sort of expert, but the person had no educational background, no degrees or anything, and so it harmed this person's paper because it was a low quality source. So it's better to not, to stay with something too long. And of course, the other thing when you write a research paper, I mean, it's more of a mixture of summary, you use some paraphrase, so you're rephrasing, and then some quotes. And you don't want to overuse any of those. You want to mix it up a little bit. So I wanted to tell you as well the textbook. So this is the one, the dialogues, a rhetoric, and a writer. And so we're going to be using this book quite a bit. And this writing research papers, this happens to be the 14th edition. And when I sent an email, maybe on the first day of class or so, I mentioned that I graduated from college in 1981, but I was a freshman in 1977. And that writing research papers was the book that I used, and was really quite good. So, when you're done with this class, obviously you don't need to keep the textbook, but if you use or if you bought the handbook, whatever you do, keep it because you will be able to use it for future classes. And in my opinion, it's a very, very good type of resource to have around. So, those are the two books for this class. The main work that we do, obviously, we do these discussion board postings. And as I said, when we do the two drafts of the paper before we get to the final draft, I'm going to have you post those, at the discussion board. And then the final draft, I'll have you just email to me, so I won't have you post that at the discussion board because I'm going to grade it. I also wanted to tell you, we'll do like a preliminary bibliography, which is just kind of a listing of sources that you are considering using. You don't have to use them. It's a preliminary listing of them. And typically I have you submit about 20 to 25 sources. So I look at them and tell you which ones I think are effective, which ones I'm kind of questionable about, and so on. We do not do an annotated bibliography. If you have to do that, what it is an annotated is a listing of each source and then a brief summary of each one. I'm just going to have you do preliminary, which is sources that you are considering using. We do an outline, which is actually very, very helpful. Some people think outlines are outdated, but they are definitely not. So I would actually encourage you to use an outline. And then, as I said, we do a couple drafts of the paper. We also do some homework assignments, and you will see those on the syllabus as we go along. I want to see a wider array of writing, not just your research paper. I just want to see how you write. And then I also wanted to tell you is we do 2 tests in this class. And what I would encourage you to do is work with a few other people in doing them. You don't have to do them by yourself. And if you want to, you can split it up. So I don't know, I think one of them is like 20 questions. And if each person wants to take 4 questions or 5 questions, that's fine. But whatever you do, do not do it by yourself. They take too long. And so, like I said, if you work with 2 or 3 other people, that's the better way to go. Sometimes in this class, like people just don't plan ahead, and then they're working on these 2 tests on the last day, and you'll never get them done on that day. So somebody was really mad about it last summer. I'm just telling you, they take time. So work with other people. I will make them available soon. And so that's about it. I'm about 20 minutes, and that's when I stop. So I do see 21 out of 26 students posted to the introductory discussion board. And then I see 4 students already posted to the the proposal for the paper. So I'll look at that on another day, probably more towards the weekend. I just have been busy this week, but I just wanted to introduce myself. Thanks.